We have spent a lot of time so far this unit graphing linear equations. The graph of a linear equation is a line. We are now going to graph linear inequalities. When we're graphing a linear inequality, there will still be a straight line. That line will be dashed or solid, and it's called the boundary line. The graph of a linear inequality also includes a shaded region, where the shaded region represents the region of solutions. When we're graphing a linear inequality, the first thing we need to do is pretend the inequality is an equation and graph that boundary line. Before we graph the boundary line, in this case y equals negative 3x plus 1, we need to determine if the boundary line will be dashed or solid. If our inequality symbol has an equal sign, that means points on the line are solutions to the inequality, and so the line is solid. That's like a closed dot when we were graphing inequalities on the number line. If there's no equal sign, then points on the line are not solutions, and so we draw the boundary line as a dashed line. That was like an open circle. So y is greater than negative 3x plus 1. I have to determine before I graph the boundary line whether it should be dashed or solid. Since there's no equal sign, points on the line are not solutions, so it should be dashed. Once I've decided that, I can go ahead and graph my boundary line. So my boundary line y equals negative 3x plus 1. My y-intercept is 1, and then down 1, 2, 3 over 1. Down 1, 2, 3 over 1. This part is just like graphing a linear equation. The reason that I determined beforehand whether my boundary line should be dashed or solid is because it's really hard once you've drawn a solid line to erase the dashes. So you still want to use a straight edge. Wow, I did a pretty good job. But you want to immediately draw the boundary line as dashed if it should be dashed. Again, the reason this line is dashed is because there's no equal sign, so points on the line are not solutions. Next, I need to determine my shading. My shading is determined by this inequality symbol. I have a greater than symbol. That means I'm going to be shading above. I'm going to be shading above because I have a greater than symbol. I determine above. I can take any point on that line, draw an arrow up, and that shows me which side is above. This is the side of the graph that is above the line. What I'm shading is all of the infinite points that are solutions to this inequality. All of the points where the y value is greater than negative 3 times the x value plus 1. Your shading will look prettier with colored pencil or even regular pencil. This arrow up to show above is useful to some students, but some students have a really hard time determining shading that way. If you have a hard time determining the shading that way, you can also plug in a point, for example, most commonly 0, 0, and see if 0, 0 satisfies the inequality. So is 0 greater than negative 3 times 0 plus 1? Is 0 greater than 0 plus 1? Is 0 greater than 1? Is 0 greater than 1? No. That means the origin is not part of my solution set. The origin should not be shaded. It's not shaded, so I shaded correctly. Since the origin was not a solution to my inequality, I shade the side that does not include the origin. Next example. Again, for an inequality, first boundary line, thinking about should it be dashed or solid, then shading. Boundary line first. Should my boundary line be dashed or solid? Are points on the line solutions to the inequality? I have a less than or equal to symbol. That means points on the line are solutions, and so I will have a solid boundary line. Let's graph that first. Y-intercept of negative 2, slope of 1/2. Up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, down 1, left 2. This will help you with your graphing skills. Straight edge, not going to overthink it. Arrows. That is just my boundary line. If you stop here, as students tend to do, you have not graphed an inequality. A linear inequality always has a shaded region. So this is the boundary of my shading. Am I shading above or am I shading below? Look at the inequality symbol and predict. I have a less than or equal to symbol. Less than or equal to means I am shading below. I like to take a point on the line and put a little arrow down and then shade. You can also plug in 0, 0. So is the origin in the solution region? Is 0 less than or equal to 1/2 times 0 minus 2? Is 0 less than or equal to 0 minus 2? Is 0 less than or equal to -2? Is it? No. Since the origin does not satisfy this inequality, since it's not a solution, since 0 is not less than or equal to -2, the origin should not be shaded, and I should be shading this side of the line.